All right, we are back here. Ethan Claire podcast show. Good to be back. The 55th episode.
55.
Oh, wow. 55. Yeah, it's crazy to think 55 episodes. We are here at the Bark in Windham. Got to plug them for letting us use the library here. The haunted house is coming up. We can't promote that enough. And there will be a trailer dropping.
Oh.
Actually,
tomorrow, right?
Well, the podcast comes out on Thursday,
yeah.
so the trailer will already be out.
Wednesday.
Sure. Yeah. So definitely go check out the haunted house at the Bark. It is a very cool event they do every year, and they include a ton of people in the community. It's a good opportunity for actors and other people who just want to have a good time come out. So
You shot a trailer, Ethan? You shot the trailer?
I shot the trailer, yeah.
You came when they were
Yep. No, well, me, Tylen, and Dylan came last night, and we just messed around and filmed. But
nice.
it ended up turning out pretty cool, and I think it'll, like I said, it'll be out tomorrow, which will be yesterday for people watching the podcast. So. Nice. This week, though, it is going to be a great episode. We've been talking about doing this for a long time. I feel like we brought this up like 10 episodes ago about doing a serial killer podcast. And I think the one we were going to talk about that we never got to was the Weepy voice killer.
Well, that's right. You mentioned that one time. I remember.
Yeah. Do you know anything about that, Chad? Have you
No.
The Weepy voice killer was a serial killer in St. Paul, Minneapolis, both sides of the river.
Okay.
And he killed, I think it was 3 or 4 girls, and he called the police right afterwards, and he was crying on the phone. I don't know if this is bringing back anything, and he's like, I'm really sorry I did it. I shouldn't have killed the girls. And, like, it's really weird, and I know you didn't do any research on that, so we won't get you asking you too many questions, but it's a one we talked about bringing up, and we never got to it, but that kind of started the whole thing about doing a podcast on serial killers, and there's got to be, we obviously know there's more and bigger named ones that people know about. And
you know, that guilt afterward is pretty common, though.
Yeah.
Like most of the serial killers that I did research about, with the exception of maybe like Ted Bundy, felt a lot of guilt afterwards. So they describe it as an addiction that they just couldn't stop. Like Dahmer would describe it that way, Ed Kemper described it that way, and they'd try to quit and they wouldn't be able to, and they'd...
Kind of like smoking.
Well, except, you know, a little more dangerous.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
I think that was the debate with the Weepy killer. Is like that was the whole debate. Did he actually feel remorse, or was he doing it for attention, calling in and throwing that voice? And
Oh, right.
Very good question to ask when you're talking about
Are we going to
this
have
kind
to
of
do a disclaimer before this one? Ethan,
yeah,
is this
you're right.
one?
You know, before, there's a couple of things we've got to say before. First of all, the guest this week is Chad Peters. Great to have you, Chad. And to give people a little background, you do have a degree in psychology, which is going to be the thing that kind of helps us out here, so we're not just talking out of our butts the whole time. We have a guy here who knows what he's talking about, so he can add another element here than us just talking about facts. We can actually dive into the minds and why people, maybe why, because we'll never know the exact reason.
True.
But maybe why people started doing this or got into it. So I feel like that adds quite a bit. So thank you very much for coming, and
absolutely.
I'm super excited to dive into this. But yes, Damon, we probably should have a disclaimer. We are going to be talking about stuff and looking at some very disturbing and not pleasant
It's
imagery.
just disturbing topics.
Yeah, it is. But people love serial killers. There's a fascination in American culture with people that kill people. I don't know what it is, why it is, but if you go back to Ted Bundy, girls were obsessed with him. I mean, that might have done with the looks too. Yeah. But there's definitely a culture of what do you call it? Fetishizing?
Absolutely.
Serial killers in the United States. So it's very interesting. So Damon Weinandt, co-host of the podcast. Can't forget that. Colin, Claire, co-host of the podcast. Great to have you guys.
Always good to be here.
Let's dive right in. We kind of started talking about it a little bit, but you were talking about some of these serial killers you named, Ted Bundy, and the guilt, feeling guilt and stuff. Why do some of them not feel guilt? Like you mentioned, Ted Bundy was one of them.
Sure. So you've got Ted Bundy had pretty classic symptoms of antisocial personality disorder. So this guy like doesn't care anything about you at all, and is probably more against the rules than for the rules. People confuse that word, by the way, antisocial.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I want to get away from people. It means that I work against society. Oh. So Ted Bundy's thing is, I'm totally above like the law. I am great. I can do anything I want to. For example, Ted Bundy once killed 2 girls at a state park in the middle of the day, separate occasions. 40,000 people were there.
Really?
He took them off into the woods. He killed one.
Wow.
Took another one off into the woods. Killed that one.
That's crazy.
And that's just totally what he got off on.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, he was married at the time when he was doing all this, wasn't he? He was leading kind of a double life, or was it a girlfriend?
Yeah, he dated several people through, and that's actually kind of common.
Really?
Let's see. Gein was never married.
No.
But
was Dahmer?
Gacy was
no,
married.
Dahmer wasn't.
Dahmer was had almost exclusively homosexual relationships.
Yeah. Yep.
But Ted Bundy lived kind of a double life where he very seriously dated two different girls at the same time and killed people while he did.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Kind of a womanizer when you talk about serial killers. Like the girls
Right.
were, I wasn't alive at the time, but from watching documentaries and stuff, women were just obsessed with Ted Bundy and thought he was innocent because he pleaded that he was innocent the whole time, right? Even till the day that he...
Not exactly.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So he says he's innocent, and then he describes all of these murders that he did.
Oh, okay.
And then he says he's innocent again.
Was he trying to get off easy, or how? I mean, what was
Well,
what was his thinking behind that?
He was maybe pleading insanity, and then just kind of gave up on it. Yeah, it's hard to get inside the mind in that way, like what motivated him at that time.
Yep.
But yeah, he's a tough one to crack.
Yeah, and I mean, we could kind of go through these here. So I have Ted Bundy. If you click on there, Colin, I have each one kind of laid out. These three guys.
1 second.
How did that happen? I have each of these laid out here. So Ted Bundy, I have around the age of 3. He began being fascinated with knives. I don't know if you you looked at anything like that.
So Ted Bundy, he lived with his mother. He had an unwed mother, and his grandparents took them in. His mother's sister still lived with his maternal grandparents.
Oh, okay.
He apparently didn't like his aunt much.
Yeah.
So he went to the kitchen one time when he was 3 years old, and she was napping, and he put all the knives in the kitchen around her, like facing her until she woke up. And when she woke up, he was just standing there smiling at her. Wow. Like 3 years old, that one's super weird.
Yeah.
If your kid does it, it doesn't necessarily mean he's a a serial killer, but it's
flag.
weird.
Well,
right?
and talking about doing stuff at a young age, bringing in the psychology aspect of it, is it? I've heard this before. Is it a thing where you can identify, not that someone's going to be a serial killer, but that they have the tendencies of being a serial killer at a young age, like killing or
like things in common,
mutilating
like
roadkill and being
Sure.
fascinated with dead animals or
Yeah,
killing
those
animals.
type of things. Yeah, especially doing a lot of damage, like inflicting pain on other things.
Yeah.
Not necessarily other people. Like Dahmer was incredibly nice to other people, but would just mutilate animals. Not always alive. In fact, most of the time, not alive.
Huh.
His big thing was he dissected roadkill. And in fact, he also dissected his victims.
Yeah.
So when he killed one of his victims, he was living with his parents, and his father found the dissected corpse.
Really?
And was like, "What's this?" And Dahmer was like, "I was dissecting roadkill." And it was like, his dad was like, "Oh, well, you've been doing that for 10 years now."
Oh my gosh. So it is kind of a thing where you could identify somebody. It's hard. It's hard though because
You would never say like this person is gonna be a serial killer.
no.
Because what, maybe 1 in a million people.
Yeah.
No, it's more than that because there's probably about 2,000 active serial killers right now.
Yeah, and I have those stats on here. Colin.
Oh,
If you
okay.
go to on there, let's see, serial
Serial
killer
killer
stats.
stats.
Well, all these on here are different. There's a ton of information online actually. Go through the arrows until I find the one I'm looking for here. Serial killers by country. Keep going.
Is serial
Frequency.
killers defined as someone who kills 3 or 4 people?
The FBI
So-
defines it as 2 or is it 2 or more?
2 or more in separate incidents.
Unrelated incidents.
And if you look at academic sources, they'll say 3 or more over the course of more than a month.
Okay.
Also all separate incidences.
Okay. And to be fair, this is the FBI's stats. So they're going off of 2 or more people. So unrelated incidents. This is the yearly average by decade. So if you look right now, 2010 to 2015, 2 or more people, 54, and 3 or more, 29. Looks like there was a huge spike in the 80s is when it was like the highest.
80s and 90s.
80s
Friday
and 90s.
the 13th movies.
I don't know.
Halloween.
Why? I wonder why that was back then.
You know, if I had to guess, I'd say it was all the publicity that they got in the 70s.
Oh.
Because that's when you're looking at like the Manson murders. Ted Bundy is from then.
Yep.
That kind of stuff, you see all that, and then your serial killers tend to copycat stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Do they do it for the attention, or do they do it for
It
the
varies.
thrill?
Well, there's definitely a thrill component to it because that's what they're addicted to.
Yep.
It'll vary from person to person, though. Like, Dahmer was addicted to it. Ed Kemper, who, by the way, is a really interesting serial killer.
I don't think I know what the Ed Kemper one.
Oh, should I just jump into it?
Jump into it.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Ed Kemper. Does he have a nickname or anything?
Big Ed.
Big Ed.
Because Ed Kemper is a 6'9" guy,
Holy
280 pounds, and
Call him Bigfoot.
right. And in the 70s, he would cruise around Santa Cruz, California, and pick up petite hitchhiking girls.
Wow.
And he had been in a mental institution from the time he was about 15 to about 21.
Yeah.
Because he killed his grandparents.
Really?
Wow. But Ed Kemper has either a... There you go.
There he is,
yeah, that's him.
Wow.
Ed Kemper has... Some sources say 135 IQ, some say 145 IQ. So while he's in this mental institution, he convinces the psychiatrists that he's rehabilitated. He comes back, he goes out when he's 21, starts driving around, comes back for his final visit with his psychiatrists, and he's got a head in his trunk. And the psychiatrist writes off, yep, I think we should expunge this from his record. He's a well-adjusted adult.
Oh, my gosh.
So, yeah. So he kills a total of 10 people.
Wow.
6 college-age victims, his grandparents, and then his mother and his mother's friend.
Wow.
And dismembers the bodies, learns how to get away with it by watching TV. Like,
really?
Yeah, like crime dramas, that kind of stuff.
Law and Order back in the day. That's crazy.
Exactly.
NCIS, wow.
And if you listen to an interview with him, he's really candid about it. He's very bright. He's well spoken. He's articulate.
Huh.
And he'll tell you all about it, like why he did it, why he thinks, and mostly he thinks it's because of his mother.
No guilt at all from doing any of this.
Not really.
Huh.
But he will say that these were people, these were not objects.
Yep.
But on the other hand, you listen to his interviews, and by the way, look up his interviews.
Should we pull one up? I mean, Colin can pull one up here if you can find
I
one.
could see if I can get...
Is there a certain
YouTube.
one, or just type in Ed Kemp interviews?
Well, the thing is, you kind of have to watch it for quite a while.
Well, we could skip in just to get a little idea of his personality.
Oh, there you go.
Just to see... Because you were talking about IQ and stuff. I have a stat on here, serial killer by IQ, and you can go through and figure out what's the average IQ for a serial killer. I don't remember, but we could check that out. Let's just pull. Yeah, this guy does look familiar. Just go to the top one, Colin. Let's see if we can get anything out of this.
Yeah, go about halfway in, see what you can
skip
get out
in
of it.
halfway, Colin.
In fantasy, acted out, felt out, hundreds of times before it ever happened.
Kemper drove them at gunpoint to a secluded area near a park. He took one of them into the woods, leaving the second girl tied in the car.
I'd just gone through a horrible experience with her roommate, stabbing her. And I was in shock because of that. I couldn't believe that it was that way. And I'm walking back there bewildered. I gotta kill her. I can't let her go. She's gonna tell on me. Everybody's gonna get me. She sees the blood on my hands. What are you doing? and she pulled back and she gasped. And I think, whoa, I don't want her to know what happened.
He is talking like
I said,
very
"Your friend got smart."
calm
Oh,
and normal
yeah.
about it.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
If you were describing going to get sandwiches from a fast food restaurant or something, like he just talks about it normally. That's crazy.
And he's actually pretty in touch with like what he wants to portray that his emotions are. But the interesting thing about this guy is he didn't interact necessarily like normal people do. He had to kind of study it. So he spent, when he got out of the mental institution when he was 21, got his car, starts meeting people, and he drives around and he's hitchhiking, picking up hitchhikers.
Yeah.
And he notices that some of them won't get in the car with him. So he's like, well, how do I make them get in the car with me? So he talks about, well, you look a little bit bored, you look at your watch, and then people will think, you're not weird, you're just busy, and you're ready to give me a ride.
Yep.
And this is how Ed figured out how humans interact.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
because that's how he figured it out, you have to kind of take everything he says with a grain of salt because, well, is that how he really feels, or is that how he studies how he thinks that you want him to feel?
Yeah, that's crazy.
He's still alive, isn't he? Because
Yeah.
he's in prison, but
yeah.
he's
Right.
still alive.
Yeah.
70
Yeah.
years old.
He's in a California, like a state hospital kind of thing.
Oh, he pled insanity. Is that what it was?
So no, well, he did, but he was found sane. Just about every serial killer is found sane.
Yeah.
And that's because the legal definition of insanity doesn't mean that you have a psychiatric diagnosis. The legal definition of insanity is essentially like you don't know what the consequences of your actions are, or you literally don't know what you're doing.
Yep.
So
Wow.
I'm not exactly sure, but I think sleepwalking would probably fit that.
Yeah.
Because you
Probably,
don't know what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah. And he talks about it very clearly. He knows what he's getting himself into.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The way he talks about it.
Yep.
So interesting. You should pull that IQ thing up, though, Colin, because I want to know what the average IQ of these serial killers are. I have it on that file as serial killers by IQ. Should be on there. Actually, it was the stats one. It was the stats one now that you brought that up. There it is. All right, average IQ is 94.5, and the median IQ 86, and the lowest was 54. The highest was 186.
Holy crap.
Are they
Yeah.
giving them tests when they get them in prison?
I'm wondering
Or-
about that.
Yeah, they give
Do
them
they?
a psychiatric eval.
Okay.
And a lot of the time, part of your psychiatric eval is a IQ test.
What's an average?
An average IQ is 100. The standard deviation is 15. So that means if you are if you're between 85, 100 minus 15,
Yep.
and 115,
That's about.
that's normal range. That puts you like 66% of the population falls within that.
Wow.
If you go up to 130 and down to 70, 95% of the population falls within that.
Wow.
If you go up to 145, then you're at 99%, then you're Mensa level. And if you hit 186, you are off the freaking charts.
Wow.
And that probably explains why your average IQ is higher than your median IQ.
Gotcha. Because you
your
have that
median-
one guy in there, the outlier.
That's throwing up your
Wow.
off your average.
I'll say the average IQ 94.5. It doesn't really help us very much because that's pretty close to that.
Falls within the
it falls
15.
within the
Yeah,
15.
yeah.
So what it does tell us though is that these people know pretty well, like what you said, like they know what they're doing.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, IQ doesn't necessarily mean that you know what you're
True,
doing.
yeah,
Like,
true.
You could easily have schizophrenia and have 130 IQ, but
Yep.
you know, be wearing a tinfoil hat and think that the government is trying to get you.
Yep.
Which is actually a real thing.
Oh?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not saying the government is really trying to get you,
But there are people
I mean,
that think
there
that.
definitely
Oh,
are
yeah.
people who think that.
For sure. Yeah. No, I know that for sure. And it's
Formally.
weird they throw killing method in here. Bomb is up there. Strangle.
Oh sure, because you got Teddy Kaczynski
Oh.
The Unabomber.
The Unabomber, yep. Wow.
and apparently 2 other people.
Yeah. What is the most? I have
Strangle.
a glare here. Strangle. No, shoot is the most common
Oh,
one.
yeah, never
61
mind.
there, and then strangle. Well, actually, what's the one? What's the 41? Is that? Oh, it is strangle.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow, poison 1 on there. Huh. Raped victims. This is another part of it too. Yes, 127. No, 143. So pretty split there. Is that a common when you were doing research? Is that something you saw pretty common?
Now, raped alive, sometimes raped dead. In fact, a lot of the time raped dead.
Yeah.
Wasn't that Dahmer's main thing?
Dahmer and Gein, right? Or was it Dahmer?
It wasn't.
Yeah,
Bundy.
raped and necrophilia. And Ed Gein
Dahmer
too,
was big
right?
into it. Kemper was big into it
Actually,
too.
Gein really couldn't have because Gein only killed 2 women, and I don't think there was anything like that. It was just more
and then
digging up people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the necrophilia thing, that was really pretty common. And I suppose that's kind of the desire that you have to press down. Like you really can't tell anybody out about.
No.
And it just bubbles up and, there's nothing to talk about.
That's another level.
Right.
The necrophilia stuff.
Was Ed Gein the one they were he'd use their skin to make things? Was
Yeah.
that-
Yeah,
Yep.
he made himself he called it a mammary vest. So it's the front of a woman, top down to her genitals with straps in the back that he could wear around.
It was his mother,
I didn't
wasn't
know
it?
that.
I thought it was his mom
maybe
because I've seen
not.
a picture of it and I couldn't pull it up. It was too bad.
Don't
but
Google that.
no,
No,
if you
I'm
go
not.
to the Ed Gein, I do have some pictures. None of them are too bad. If you kind of want to go through some of these, there is, and I only put one of these in there because this is it's just a bad. There's really gruesome pictures. This is the girl, one of the girls he killed. I think it was
the first victim from the hardware store. Right?
Yeah, yep. And he hung her. This is actually how she was found when the police came to her. Came to his farm site that Ed Gein had her upside down in his barn with a bar in between, and that's kind of when they discovered everything. Oh, and she was where did I have it on here? She discovered Bernie Warden on Gein's property in a shed, hung upside down by her legs with a crossbar at her ankles. Torso was dressed out like a deer, shot and mutilated.
Right.
He had her kind of cut in half like a deer to like drain the blood and everything. Just nasty.
But she would have been hanging up there for quite some time. I mean, he wasn't caught right away by any means.
Well, it was, I think it might have been kind of quick because I'm pretty sure someone saw him leaving the hardware store and they went out to his property. So it would have been within like a
maybe it
week.
was quicker than I thought.
It would have been pretty quick, I think.
Was this in the 50s? Was this an early one?
60s, I think.
50s,
was it?
60s?
Oh, killed 2 women in 1954 and 1957. There was a 3-year gap there.
So yeah, first victim, 3 years hanging there.
That's
He's the one that
crazy.
only killed the 2.
Yeah, 2.
Right.
But
Known victims?
that's not really where it gets bad. It says when he was exhuming bodies, digging 40 bodies up, maybe more. They don't know the exact number.
Was it that many?
Yeah, 40
wow.
corpses. Well, that's what they can figure out from taking different bones and different different things because he turned their bones into furniture, and he had like a skull that was a bowl or something, and he had skin. He had skin stretched over a chair as I have a picture of that on here. Here's Ed Gein's. Go back. There's Ed Gein. Here's Ed Gein's. You can zoom in on that, Colin. His headstone was famously stolen a number of times, and I think they eventually found it out in Washington. Some college kids had taken it.
There's 666 written right on it.
Yeah, vandalized and stolen many times. A picture. The next one is an actual picture of Ed Gein, what he looked like. If you go through the next one, Colin, you got to zoom back out and click over. There he is, right there. If you zoom in on him, kind of he was a loner, wasn't he? He was not a
Totally.
very he was just kind of a weird
pretty
hermit.
low IQ kind of guy.
Yep.
He was described as simple but harmless.
Yep.
Made most of his living doing odd jobs, farm work. They said he was a hard worker.
What
but
state was he in? Did he live in? Did you cut-
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
It was Wisconsin. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Same with Dahmer.
Yep.
Yeah, his
His
mom,
house right here. These are the pictures of his house. His mom died in his house, right? And he never touched that room.
Right, yeah. The house looked like this, except for her room, which was untouched because he boarded it up.
Yep. And he wasn't just a hoarder, not a hoarder, but he just didn't clean ever.
Yeah.
Like, here's pictures. There's a couple more, Colin, if you go through, of his actual house. Here's some of the things he made out of humans. If you zoom in on it, Colin, these are things that they found. I don't even know what there's a fork, a spoon. I don't know what some of the other things are. There's a face.
Picture frame, but...
Yeah, a mask. He did it. This is inspired Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's
This
right.
is the guy that inspired Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't know what those two things are, if those are nails made out of bones or if those are actual fingers. I have no idea.
And Buffalo Bill, Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, yeah. Inspired
in part
quite a bit.
based on him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, this is skin.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that decompose?
Yeah, you'd have to tan it.
Oh, it's hard to go to the next one.
Like you would have.
Like a hide or
Yeah,
something.
yep.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm trying to find the chair. They held an auction on Gein's property after he was arrested, and they sold a lot of his stuff.
Really?
Yeah. So you could go buy Ed Gein's. Actually, a big guy, like a famous person, bought Ed Gein's car that he used to transport bodies from the cemetery. I can't think of who it was though. And you can actually see it to this day.
I was going to say the FBI should keep that bill of sale with people who are interested in buying that furniture.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they could sell like things made out of human
Sure.
skin and stuff like that. I mean, that'd be.
Yeah.
I hope not.
I'm trying to find the chair on here though. Another picture of his house. There's an outside picture of the house, so it's secluded, out in the country. Go to the next one. There's the.
Is that him?
No, that's his kitchen. No, that's a detective going through.
I was gonna say, how'd they get that one?
Yeah, go to another one. Okay, here's the chair. So that's human skin tanned and attached to a chair, and that is just unbelievable to me. That is something else. That's crazy.
I'm getting like a weird feeling through my body. It's just weird.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's probably a normal thing. It's messed up to think about that someone could do that to somebody else and then decide to put it on a chair. Go to the next one, Colin, if I have any more on here. Here's what they found. Searching the house, authorities found whole human bones and fragments, a wastebasket made of human skin covering several chair seats, skulls on his bedpost, female skulls, some with the, what does it say, top sawn off, bowls made from human skulls, a corset made from a human torso, skin from shoulders to waist.
And you're not even halfway down the list, and that's a lot of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff, yeah.
4 noses.
Is that what it says? I haven't got that.
Yeah,
first
it's down there.
There's a whole bunch of stuff on here. A pair of lips on a window shade drawstring, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face, fingernails from female fingers. So,
I'm laughing because Colin, you're like,
yeah,
It's so bad.
out of all the guys we're gonna talk about, I think Ed Gein took this to a whole nother level with dissecting and taking things off. I mean, some of the other guys do that as well, but it's more to, I think, cover themselves, like hiding bodies, taking things and putting like heads over here and their body over there.
Yeah, what was Dahmer doing with the bodies? Was he putting them in a freezer, or was he?
Was he burying them in his basement, or was that?
No, that's Gacy.
Gacy. Okay.
Dahmer would strip the flesh off, dissolve it in acid, and then pulverize the bones to get rid of them.
Was that to cover his tracks, just to get rid of the evidence, or
for the most part?
Because he wasn't building stuff out of the corpses.
No, he was like he'd dissolve the flesh in acid and flush it.
Yep.
Although he did keep a few things later on, especially when he got his own apartment. He lived with his parents and then with his grandma for quite a while.
He was doing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't he doing like lobotomies to his victims?
Oh yeah. He
like,
tried to. His thing was he wanted to raise the dead. So he was like drilling holes in their skulls in order to have his own necromantic playthings, if you want to call them that.
And that's kind of how he got caught, actually. Almost caught, right? The one time was when the guy ran out of the house and went to the neighbors, and they called the police. And then he actually convinced the police that it was a drunk. I have that on here.
A lover's quarrel kind of thing?
Yeah, it was one of his. I'm trying to remember. I thought I had that on here somewhere. Gosh, I can't remember that.
And the thing is, this would have been about like 90, 91.
Yeah.
And at that time, the police just didn't worry about that kind of crime.
Yep.
because if it's between gay people, and they just didn't care that much.
Yeah. Oh, and I have it right here. A cops came the one time when an already lobotomized victim escaped. Dahmer convinced the police it was his intoxicated boyfriend, and that guy's name was Tracy Edwards.
Right.
In 1991. Wait, was that right? 91? Is that when Dahmer was?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, between 1978 and 1991, he murdered 17 males. Rape, dismemberment, necrophilia, cannibalism. He ate them, too. I forgot about that.
Some of them.
Yeah, he'd cook their flesh and stuff like that. The weird part about Dahmer, what I found,
just
was,
one weird part.
Yeah. Well, the weirdest thing to me was the first murder was when he was 18 years old, and then he waited actually 9
then he
years.
joined the army.
Oh, okay, so that was the big thing. I was wondering why there was a big.
Not for that long. He was only in the army for like a year.
Oh,
but he joined the army. He was a medic.
I wonder why he waited 9 years before he murdered his next victim.
It's an addiction. So you're like, oh, that was terrible. I absolutely can never do it again. And then, 9 years later, Dahmer was a serious alcoholic.
Oh, okay.
So Dahmer gets hammered. Well, this guy picked me up. And for a while, Dahmer was going to Milwaukee bathhouses, gay hangouts.
Yep.
And he'd have sex with men. And he was upset that they moved around too much. So he started putting sedatives in their drinks.
Wow.
And then he'd have sex with them then. It took them 12 times of him doing that to say, you don't have a membership in here anymore. You can't come.
12 times. That's crazy. Here's a picture of Dahmer right here. What's with the Wisconsin serial killers? It seems like Wisconsin's like the home of some of the worst ones.
There's just a couple from Wisconsin. I don't think there's.
Gacy was Illinois, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking he was Wisconsin too. No, yeah.
Gacy's the clown, right?
Killer
Yep,
clown.
that's
yeah.
right.
Yep. Go through what else do I have on here, Colin?
Oh.
Okay, because Dahmer's there's the acid.
Yep.
That you brought up. I forgot about that. This is police evidence photos of Dahmer at his house. Go through, Colin. He had the altar in his closet. I don't know if you knew much about this. He had when the police searched his apartment. They don't have a picture of it, thank God. Just a drawing. He had like skeleton altar, like a weird mural type thing with like candles and like human body parts and stuff. Very, very creepy. That they discovered. Colin, go through some more of this. He also was one of the few that took an unbelievable amount of pictures of dismembering the bodies and stuff.
Sure.
They found all of his Polaroids. Again, thank God they're blurred out because I don't want to look at some of that. But they found just an unbelievable amount of Polaroids of all the different things he did with them. And I don't know if that's common for...
Ted Bundy did that too.
Oh, did he?
One of Ted Bundy's things was he would... kill these women.
Yep.
He'd take them out, bury them in the wood, or not bury them necessarily, but he would come back later to their naked bodies and he'd dress them up. He'd comb their hair. He'd put makeup on them. Some of them were found wearing clothes that weren't theirs with nail polish they never had.
Wow.
And he'd have sex with the dead bodies.
This is Bundy you're talking about?
This is Bundy.
Okay.
Bundy.
With the Bundy female dead bodies.
Yep.
Until they started to absolutely rot. And I just can't figure out how these serial killers can deal with the smell of rotting flesh. Like, I've got a ground beef wrapper in my garbage for a day, and that's too long.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's got to be something not triggering, obviously, that they can just do this kind of stuff and not have any like sense of like, this is probably not a good idea or like the right thing to be doing.
Well, or they're actually maybe sexually excited by the fact that it's so terrible and so smelly.
True. I know. I mean, that could be part of it. It's got to be part of it because it's got to be a turn on for them to want to do it again and do it again.
Absolutely.
And that one can't be used anymore, so we got to do it again.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. Colin, go to the next one. Yeah. These are the pans that they found in his house that apparently had flesh in them. This is on Dahmer again. Go through, Colin, next one. This is inside of his fridge, and there are actually like skulls in there, clearly visible in the plastic bag in the far left of the fridge. Mm-hmm. You could see a skull wrapped up in there. So he kept some of this stuff. I don't know what his plan was to do with it. I'm not sure exactly what it was.
Eat it, I believe.
Is that what it,
what
it was?
For Dahmer, cannibalism was a big thing.
This is talking about the dishes. Keep going, Colin.
So Dahmer lived with his parents for a while, and then he moved out and got his own apartment. Did he have a relationship with his mom and his dad? Or that's kind of like a theme or a connection to a lot of these.
The interesting thing with Dahmer is his dad was a research chemist. He had a PhD. His mom had a series of what they would have called nervous issues at that time. So it looked like she had some real severe anxiety kind of problems. And he lived with his parents, and then I think, did he join he had a real serious alcohol problem, even in high school. Like he would drink. He'd bring alcohol to school every day, starting at like 14. People would ask him, "What are you doing? Like, why are you drinking gin in class?" And he'd say, "It's my medicine."
Wow.
So anyway, he's got this serious alcohol problem, but he has a really good relationship with his grandmother. So he moves out to his grandmother's place for a while. It goes pretty well, and he's still drinking, still smoking, but, like going to church and that kind of thing. And then his grandmother kicks him out because he is bringing home all these men late at night to her house. And, she's a church-going grandmother, doesn't approve that kind of thing.
Oh, no.
So, kicks him out, then he gets his own place.
Wow. And I know that you brought up the alcohol thing. He was also known for getting drunk and taking apart animals and dissecting the corpses of the animals. And I don't know if this is, I don't remember, I don't have the, when he did that, but I just have on here drinking and taking apart dead animals was one of the notes I wrote down.
Yeah, that was probably a teenage thing.
Probably, yeah. And then that obviously led into the first murder at 18. I didn't write any details down on that one. I'm trying to remember exactly who that was at 18. It was a hitchhiker, and then he scattered the remains all over his yard, so he must have dug multiple holes. Because I know when they dug...
he filleted off the flesh.
Oh, that's okay.
And then pulverized the bones.
Oh, my gosh. And then sprinkled it around the yard.
Pretty much.
That is messed up.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. That's crazy. I don't know what this is here. I think this might be a video of the police searching Dahmer's house.
From our investigation, we feel that this individual strongly is involved in other homicides. We have taken evidence out of the building by the medical examiner to be examined.
Police removed boxes and boxes of body parts, evidence of what appears to be a psychopathic mass murder. Authorities also took out a barrel of what they think is acid. Police are reluctant to reveal exactly how many victims there might be, but knowledgeable investigators say it could be more than a half a dozen. Neighbors say the man was strange and that there was an odor coming from the apartment. However, no one suspected the accumulation of dead bodies.
And the next thing I know, I heard the police open the refrigerator door, and they said it was a dead body in there.
Police are questioning the suspect downtown. All we really know about him is that he is 31 years old.
You turn off, Colin.
That's early. That's early then. Like when they first showed it on the news, we didn't really know anything about.
That is the first news clip of Dahmer before they even mentioned his name. They just brought up the thing. It's funny that the neighbors say there's an odor coming from the apartment.
Well,
how strong does it have to be where it'll drift across the hall into like your neighbor's apartment where you can smell body parts? Like, that's unbelievable to me.
Right. And that kind of stuff blows me away. Like, John Wayne Gacy buried 33 people under his house. Well, 30 people under his house.
Yeah.
And then he'd have parties. Like, people would come over and they'd be like, "What's that smell?" And not just the kids who worked for him, because those were a lot of the people that he killed, but like Gacy was a member of the JCs. He owned his own construction company. He'd have parties where like police would come over.
That's crazy.
And they'd be like, "Why does your house smell so bad?" And he'd be like, "Well, there's a serious sump pump problem, and my dog has just been terrible."
Isn't it crazy to think that there is such a disconnect where those people came to his house thinking this is a completely normal guy and he's actually a monster?
Yeah.
And you would believe that it was a sump pump issue and that you actually then were to find out this guy killed 30 whatever people.
Is a complete psychopath. Has a bunch of bodies under his house.
How diabolical they are. And Chad mentioned earlier, which is very interesting, how you study how a normal person would act. And if you're a serial killer and you're having people over your house, that's always in the back of your mind, and you're always being somebody else and thinking about, quote unquote, acting normal.
Ethan, what's this picture about here?
That's the apartment. In the hallway, those are the neighbors across, and then his apartment was on the right. I'm pretty sure. Because he lived in an apartment building. It wasn't like a house. It wasn't like
in Milwaukee, correct?
Yeah,
like
in Milwaukee. He didn't have like a private residence to do this at. He thought it'd be a good idea to kill people in an apartment building.
That's another thing, yeah.
Ethan, we should ask Grandpa Claire about this sometime.
Yeah,
he was in Milwaukee at that time.
Yeah, he grew up in Milwaukee. He would have been there in this time. So that'd be really interesting, actually. Yeah. Is there any more pictures of Dahmer that I have? Oh, just okay. More tools they found to decapitate and dismember his victims. There's a lot of really interesting pictures online.
Pictures, one more video.
Probably putting it lightly. There's another video? No, I don't think so.
Oh, just this news thing.
Yeah, we watched that already. So Dahmer is a really interesting one just because the apartment thing to me that he thought it'd be a good idea to bring people back when he knew other people could hear screaming or I wonder how would he do that without anyone finding out?
Dahmer drugged his victims.
Oh, you were saying that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he drugs them, then I think he strangles them, and then he has sex either with the unconscious body or strangles them first and then kills them and then has sex with the dead body.
It's crazy stuff. And you were bringing up some of the psychological things before. You were talking about how you were talking about the bunny. What experiment was that again?
Right. So if you'd look at how can you what would cause these types of fetishes? One of the experiments you might think of when you want to cause phobias, and you could relate this later to how you might cause a sexual fetish. But one of the earliest experiments in behavioral psychology was done by John Watson. It's called the Little Albert Experiment, and basically what they did is they brought fluffy white objects in front of an infant, and they'd show him, and infants love fluffy white objects. So initially he absolutely loves these things, and then they show him the bunny or whatever, and then they bang pots together, or they clap cymbals, or they make really loud noises. Pretty soon, Albert is scared. Albert, the infant, is scared of fluffy white things. Now, the interesting, and by the way, this was done in the early 1900s. You wouldn't do this to a child anymore.
No, definitely not.
No.
But anyway, what that showed is that you can associate fear with an object that you shouldn't necessarily be fearful of.
Yeah.
In the same way, you could also associate sex with something that you should not necessarily think of as sexual. And if you look at, I think Dahmer was big into detective magazines. Ted Bundy definitely was. And not like factual magazines, but the ones that show the pictures of the victims.
Yep.
So if you see, if you're a 13-year-old boy and you're like, oh, wow, boobs. So you're masturbating to the boobs of the victim, but also this is a dead victim. Then you start to associate sex and death.
Wow. I never even thought about it like that. You think that's kind of what happened with some of these guys, is that they were, at early ages, they were connecting the two?
So to be a serial killer, you need several things. One is a genetic predisposition. Two, a lot of the time, seems to be a trauma of some sort.
Yep.
And then three, is the timing of certain events. So a timing of an event like that could contribute. I'm not saying it does in every case, certainly.
Do you feel that now would be a good time to bring that up? Just about all serial killers are white Caucasian males.
Well,
there's a few that aren't. But do you tie that into a sexual desire with maybe males, and that's why more they're serial killers than females? I'm sure we have a couple examples of some female.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, when I was doing research, it's at the Radford University FGCU serial killer database, which they keep track of every serial killer. It's was done in part with the FBI. And on here, they go by race and gender. And the weird thing is, it's almost 100% male. It's most of the time male. The weird thing is, when you bring in race, it really will shock you to find out that there's a big difference between what we perceive to what it actually is. Here is the stats, and if you look at it on there, it is predominant. There does seem to be a lot of whites doing it, but if you look at it, there's also in like the 2010s and the 2000s, it's actually blacks.
More.
Blacks have a higher percentage of serial killers than whites do.
I suppose you'd have to break down these numbers and exactly what type of serial killer, like we're talking, like the ones we're talking about, like as opposed to if they're counting like mass bombings, or I guess we'd have to define what serial killer.
Again, this one is the FBI, so they're defining 2 or more killings, but not related.
Yeah, separated.
So, separated incidences. Yeah, and so in the 1990s, actually, really the 1980s and the 1970s. Okay, the 60s. So pretty much all the way up until the 90s is when there's a turn, and because then it switches more to blacks are the race that seems to be the serial killers, the highest percentage. But before that, the 80s is dominated by whites. The 70s are dominated by whites. Pretty much everything before that is whites. But after the 90s, it switches. Or during the 90s, it switches, actually. I was kind of shocked to see that because...
Yeah, I'm trying to rack my brain and think, what would be the last one that would be comparable? Like, is there a recent serial killer that's come out?
I'm trying to think,
that would be like, I don't want to say popular, like the ones we're talking about.
The last one I could think of,
media coverage, or like
the last one I could think
Zodiac
of
stuff,
was the Gary serial killer in Gary, Indiana, who killed I think 13 women, and he hid their bodies in different abandoned buildings, and they ended up finally catching the guy, and he'd been doing it for years, just going back. That's the last one I could think of. This happened a couple years ago, not that long ago.
I can think of a trucker not very long ago.
Really?
Who would pick up prostitutes at truck stops.
Oh.
And then he'd keep them chained up in the back, use them as sex slaves until he decided to kill them. But
that's crazy.
By the time he decides to kill them, they're hundreds of miles away.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot. They just don't. I'm not following it or don't read about it.
They don't do media coverage like they used to.
Which is probably good.
It is good. Because I'm big. Like we talked about this before, school shootings. I'm a big proponent of not revealing the people because they do it for attention. Not all of them, but there's a lot of them that will never do anything in their life that will get them out there to where people care about them or know them or whatever.
We joked like, don't give serial killers like quote unquote cool names. Like call them,
give them nicknames.
The killer clown.
Don't give them cool nicknames to foul or.
But I think
there's
a lot of these people do it for the attention, and so by showing them on TV or whatever, like you said, it was the publicity they got in the 70s that caused a spike in the 80s for all these people.
It could be related.
I believe it because I think
that would be a good assumption.
That'd be a very good assumption to make because of how much media coverage Ted Bundy got, how much media coverage the Mason case.
Zodiac Killer was writing letters all the time for attention.
Yeah,
giving out clues
and it probably didn't help that they showed how much girls like Ted Bundy and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it just is more reasons to. And you said copycat. Then people get ideas and people want to look more into it, and. It is weird to think, though, that nowadays you don't really hear of big serial killers like Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer. You don't hear people common names that people can throw around like that.
And I wonder if they get caught before they have multiple victims, or if they've watched enough crime dramas that they don't get caught.
Yeah, that's what you always rack your brain about with ones that are not getting caught that are out there that we don't know about.
True.
Chad, I was going to ask you a follow-up question. Like, as you're doing all this research, did you find 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever number of like common, I mean, not like tip-offs or like you're going to be a serial killer, but things in common with a lot of the serial killers you're looking at, like mothers or relationships or to that point?
There were quite a few that either didn't have good relationships with their mothers or didn't have mothers at all. Like Eileen Warnos, one of the few female serial killers who...
Yeah, tough to find.
Yeah, she was a prostitute who killed 7 men. All Johns. And, like, her mother gave her up at age 4. Ed Kemper lived with his mother, but it was an abusive relationship either between... Well, I mean, he was 6'9", so I can guess who was abusive there.
Yeah.
But she was fairly, like, vocally abusive. In fact, when he killed her, he had something called iramatio with the head, and this is a pretty common thing with him. He'd sever the heads, have iramatio, and you guys have heard of fellatio?
Yeah, I can probably figure out.
Iramatio is when there's no movement on the part of the giver, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Okay, so and it has iramatio with the severed head
of his mother.
Of his mother. And that was common for him, like with a lot of his victims.
That is messed up.
And then tries to take out her vocal cords and put them down the garbage disposal. Garbage disposal won't handle it, spits the vocal cords back up, and he says, well, it was fitting that Mom got one more yell out into the world.
What the heck?
Because, like, all she ever did was yell at him to begin with.
So it was a bad relationship.
Terrible. Wow. Terrible.
That is messed up.
And like I said, at least with the famous serial killers, a relationship with a mother seems to be a major issue.
Or with women all in general, it kind of seems like.
Sure.
It is, yeah. Well, we talked about this before. We talked about the incels, and I don't know if you're familiar with that. The voluntary incels. These are just a group of men right now that are they've pretty much given themselves the tag of incel, that they're just they're involuntarily celibate. So they not involuntarily. They're voluntarily celibate. They are just they have a hatred for women. And they think that they just because they can't get laid, that they have some.
Oh yeah. I know who you're talking about.
And I'm pretty sure that the guy that crashed that van into the crowd at a protest was voluntarily celibate. So it's kind of a new movement. We talked about this before. Not a lot of people are familiar with it.
Yeah.
But it's just a group of men that talk on the internet and plan killings of women. And not just women, but crowds of people, because they cannot get laid. That's what it's all about.
Prostitutes are $50.
I mean,
that sounds like serial killer. That sounds like the start of serial killer.
Totally, yeah. But like a group of them.
This is a community of people, and not all of them. They get mad when you put them all in this pool of guys that kill people and stuff. But that is kind of the whole thing. Is they make jokes about killing women and how they kill them. And there was an interview done with one where he said, we talk and we say things, but that doesn't mean we're going to do them. And like he was talking about...
Oh, that shouldn't get traction. That's horrible.
No, yeah.
I mean, the first part about it is fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another really common thread amongst serial killers, is from a young age, they have fantasies about killing people.
How does that come in psychologically, where you're at
where you'd have those fantasies?
Yeah, where you'd have those fantasies. Like what would...
probably... From the detective stories, like I was talking about before, that kind of stuff. I mean,
is it abuse? Could that be?
It could certainly be abuse.
Abuse turning into anger, which makes them want to kill like animals, and then
Sure.
Well, like I don't know if there's anything but like if they were sexually abused by a family member, a dad or their father, anything like that.
Yeah, that's where the trauma part plays in.
Yep.
You got your genetic predisposition, your trauma.
Now, what do you mean by genetic predisposition? What do you mean by that?
So
that's where you come in and say born evil. I think.
Yeah, is that what it is pretty much?
Well, I would never say somebody is born evil, but you can have a smaller or less functioning prefrontal cortex. So the front of your brain right up here is where you control most of your thoughts and emotions. Like you use that as the backstop for your thoughts and emotions. Like it will stop you from doing the things that you shouldn't be doing.
And I would say with Chad too, I would not say people were born evil. We've had this little, not a real debate, but said it where like you feed the good wolf, bad wolf type situation, or like and exactly what Chad just said with the frontal lobes and
that so it's something where they can't really help it. Is that part of it, or is it?
So Ed Kemper describes this quite a bit. He talks about having the fantasies, and then, well, you play out a little more. So what he picked up like 150 hitchhikers, right? And he has these fantasies about him, and then he starts to carry a knife with him in the car. And then he starts to carry a gun with him in the car. And then he takes the women to secluded areas. And then he shows the women the gun, and then it's all over.
So it's a build-up. It's a slow build-up to get to that point. Is it pushing his limits each time? Is it where he's like, I did this before, now I'm going to go a little bit farther. And he gets excited by that. So he's like,
exactly.
Because he kind of loses, not just him, but these serial killers lose, like, they get desensitized to the whole act, and so they need to do more. They need to do... How can I get even crazier that can get me more excited or whatever?
Yep, it feeds the addiction.
Yeah.
But the thing about addiction is you have tolerance and withdrawal. So, you build up a tolerance to what you've been doing or in some time, and you're withdrawing from it. You need to do it again.
Wow. Is there any other psychological experiments that have been done that explain a little bit more about serial killers or anything like that?
Okay, let's see.
I'm just trying to think of other ways to
connections, like
dive in. Connections. I love the connections. How do you? How do you connect all these guys from different times in history and backgrounds and?
Okay, so this may not necessarily describe serial killers, but it will describe good people that do bad things.
Yeah, maybe that's what we're looking for.
So, the Zimbardo experiment is done at Yale, and sometimes they call it the Zimbardo prison experiment.
I have heard of this.
Okay, they take some undergrads, and they say, all right, half of you are going to be guards, half of you are going to be prisoners. And we're going to switch in a week. And the guards did terrible things to the prisoners. They'd make them sing their ABCs repeatedly and in order to get, like, trivial things like food. Just because there's nobody saying, no, as somebody in authority, you can't do this. And then after less than a week, they had to stop the experiment. They were like, we
get out of hand.
Can't. Yeah, this is getting crazy.
Yeah. Wow.
And that might not directly reflect on serial killers, but what it does tell you is that when you don't control somebody, then they can get out of hand. Even people of upper middle class or upper class upbringing.
Oh yeah.
And so if you don't have your prefrontal cortex or frontal cortex to help slow you down and say, no, don't do this, then you may end up in a situation like that.
Wow.
Control would be a buzzword with a lot of serial killers, too. I
believe. Yeah.
That,
so another common thread was a lot of them wanted to be cops.
Really? I didn't know that, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
they would either
Ted Bundy wanted to be a cop, didn't
he? Ted Bundy actually went to law school.
Oh yeah, went to law school. Yep.
Because he was his own lawyer, wasn't he, or something?
Yep.
He was his own lawyer. Because he was his own lawyer, he was unshackled. So during
he jumped out the window, right?
During the middle of the trial, he says, "I'm my own lawyer. I need to go to the law library."
Yeah.
And then he crawls out the second floor window.
Yep.
Ed Kemper went to community college, tried to be a police officer.
Really?
They wouldn't let him in because of his size. Like, he was just too big to be a police officer.
I wonder why they want to go to police school. Is it to learn the things that they know they can get away with?
Right. So the two things are, how do the police investigate me? And if I could be a police officer, I would have tons of control.
Yep. Oh, because they were planning on like leading a double life then. If they ever did become a police officer, they could commit crimes and then cover them up.
Quite possibly.
Above the law.
So it's
Cottonwood.
So a very small percentage, police officers, but there are some or other like that experiment is very interesting because if you put someone who has never had power before or doesn't know how to be a good leader, work themselves up, you put them in a position of power, they're going to abuse it. But if you have someone who is a real leader and they're going to be in a position of power, they're going to know how to use it positively.
Exactly.
But if a serial killer has no way to get power, and the only way to get power is to look into getting into a position like a police officer where they can use their power, or they take it upon themselves to control their victims. And
Now, another weird thing that I found, if you go to, Colin, go to Serial Killers by Country, it's right there. We have an issue with serial killers in the United States. Pretty much more than the entire world.
Yeah, big time.
Look at the United States, and then the next country, the United States is 3,204 different serial killers. England is below us at 166. We have an unbelievable. We have 67% of the world's serial killers in the United States,
but only 4% of the population, 4.3% of the population.
Unbelievable.
That's amazing.
I wonder why we have such an issue in the United States, but other countries don't have an issue like we do.
I mean, I don't know what they watch on TV, but I
think it has to do with media.
I hate to point to the media, but I mean, every show or any hour of the day, you can find a crime drama.
Oh, yeah.
And usually about somebody who's either a fake serial killer or a real serial killer.
Yeah.
Do you think that's such a tough argument with the media because there's so many good people that watch those shows that would never do anything like that?
Oh, absolutely.
You have the person that's already doing stuff with animals who has a bad home life, and then they watch that and they get ideas.
Right. So you have your genetic predisposition.
Yep.
And then you have a traumatic event, and then you have something else that says, we should push you this way just a little more.
And then there's some trigger flipped in their brain.
It's like that one person who takes something in the media the wrong way or takes it literally and just believes it and runs with it. And that's why it's so dangerous to make up some conspiracy theories in some instances.
Right. Exactly, yeah.
I have to bring this up just because it's on topic. But now that it's October 1st, there's some good classic movies on, and Friday the 13th was on. And I was over visiting my parents. My mom was watching it.
Really?
And I just remember like how scary Friday the 13th was, like when I was younger, like, at that right age. But now it's like nothing compared to watching CSI.
No.
It's I'm thinking my mom shouldn't be watching this but she'll be scared. But no, her Thursday shows are probably more scary than this is.
Exactly, yeah. It's 100% a thing.
The jump scares.
When I was in film school, I went back and watched all the original Friday the 13th movies, all like the Nightmare on Elm Street.
The anticipation.
It is, but it's those movies were so like there wasn't a lot of like blood and like violent stuff. It was more like the building up, and the suspense. But nowadays it's shock factor. How can we do something that just disgusts you that you get scared by how disgusting it is? There's not really the suspense build up. It's more like
Final Destination.
Yeah, Final Destination, the Saw movies, like the Human Centipede movies. Like how much disgusting, nasty stuff can you put in there to where you're actually like, that's horrible. Like it's like we're talking about this stuff, but then you look at these movies some of the movies are almost worse, like Human Centipede.
You could like relate this serial killing to Psycho, the movie, one of the classics from Hitchcock. I mean, like the shower scene and his mother in the. Well, I won't. Spoiler alert for a 60-year-old movie.
Right. I think everyone knows that scene. It's crazy to think that movies inspire real events, and then real events inspire movies.
Exactly.
It kind of art imitates life, and life imitates art.
Mm-hmm.
In this meaning, the worst possible way, by horrible things going on. But it's tough to bring in the media argument just for me, because I know there are good people that watch that stuff too. But I know I know that's not what you're trying to say either. I'm just saying for those that whatever percent it is of the population that decides to act on those impulses, it's not good. It's bad if they watch stuff like that.
And typically I don't make that argument, but that's really about the only thing that I can see that's different between our countries. I mean,
true.
We don't differ genetically incredibly from like England.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. There's got to be something we'll never know. We'll never know exactly what it is. It could be that like we talked about, the United States is known for over publicizing events that are really traumatic and horrible.
But there again, you're blaming the media.
True. Yeah, I guess I thought you were more talking about movies and stuff, but you're maybe more talking about news and...
Well, both.
Newspaper, both, yeah.
Everything goes back to the media.
Yeah. Can't blame the media for everything, but I get where you're going for that, or coming from with that. It's weird to look at a stat like that and to think like that's an unbelievable...
A lot that goes into
what's
those stats.
So radically different about us.
Yeah, I'll have to do more research and see if I can find anything else that makes me or comes into my head that I could think of that would maybe figure out why.
I'm curious myself.
It is.
Because India had a large global population from that stat. I noticed, like, we had a 4% stat, and I think India's was like at 17%, meaning that there's a lot. But then I always have to fall back on what type of serial killings going on, 2 or more, more like what is the, instance there too.
And I think it would be pretty difficult to kill somebody in India without being seen.
So many people.
I mean, there's a lot of people there.
There is, yeah. Killing people in India or China, you got to be dang good. If you came to the United States, you'd probably be able to kill
China
a lot more.
had a high one too for the...
Was it really?
I mean, for the compared to the global population, I think it was like 14% maybe.
Wow, that's crazy.
But yet a very low percentage of serial killers.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder, another thing to kind of throw in there is if income has anything to do, or like your social status has anything to do with serial killers. Like if low income households or people that grew up in poverty are more likely to commit crimes.
I'd say the correlation would be if it was only causing negative relationships. I mean, that's just formulating an opinion from listening to these stats, how bad those relationships were that started a lot of these people off.
Yeah, in fact, I would say most of the serial killers that, the famous serial killers that I studied were middle class.
Middle class.
I mean, Ted Bundy went to law school.
Yep.
Although he wasn't very good with money. Like Dahmer's parents were... His dad was a research chemist, analytical chemist.
Yeah, true.
I mean...
Ed Gein would probably be considered low poverty.
Yeah. But,
Gacy, what? Well,
Gacy
you said he
owned his own construction business at the time when he was killing people.
Was he putting people under concrete then? Like,
no.
He just
buried them in the crawl space.
In the crawl
Really?
space, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, the 2 guys that killed their parents, really wealthy guys, the brothers.
Eric and Lyle Menendez.
The Menendez twins, yeah. They were
brothers.
Very rich, right?
Yeah.
They were.
Oh, yeah.
Are they? So it's probably harder to find like the wealthy that are serial killers. I would have probably assumed.
Well, I bet it's harder for them to get caught.
True. I mean, I don't know if OJ is he probably wouldn't be considered a serial killer, but look at that. Where money can get you off of... But off of killing somebody, and so I don't know. That's just another thing to throw on there. I couldn't find the stat on income or if there was anything to do with that.
Yeah, I mean,
he was found innocent, so we can't say he.
Yeah,
would have been one occasion.
Everybody knows OJ killed. I don't know if there's like a stat.
I'm just throwing the fact.
Yeah. The fact is, true. What were you gonna say though, Chad?
Actually, I forget. But in white America, everybody thinks they know that OJ killed Nicole and was it Ron?
Yeah.
I thought he just killed one person, or was it two?
No, it was two. Yeah, it was his wife and
the boyfriend.
Her boyfriend.
Okay.
In Black America, that the opposite is true.
But I think that stat changed. That was,
did it now?
That stat was from when the whole thing was going down. It was definitely a racial divide.
Yep.
But I think after the whole court case and everything happened, I'm pretty sure that the stat right now, Colin, if you could look up what percentage of America,
hit that one. I'm curious.
It has changed. I know it did change. That because there definitely was a racial divide.
Yeah, it was huge.
It was a huge thing. I mean, I wasn't alive at the time, but I just have seen documentaries and stuff on it. But now I'm pretty sure that the 2 decades later, black and white Americans finally agree on O.J. Simpson's guilt.
All right.
What are the numbers now, Colin? Does it say? Okay, here it is right here. So it definitely went up.
All right.
So 57% of blacks believe that he is guilty. 83% of whites believe.
Got me there.
So
then.
well, I just remember
that's still kind of a little.
It's a huge difference.
It is, yeah. But considering in 94, it was 63% of whites believed he was guilty, and only 22% of blacks thought he was guilty.
82 to 31.
Yeah.
97.
Yeah, that's a huge difference too. So that's another interesting thing. I don't know.
Right.
Here's where it started: 63 and 22.
Yeah, 63 and 22.
So it changed from 41 to 26.
It's weird that it went down in 2007. It went to 74 for whites, and that's weird. I wonder why it went down from 97 to 2007. Because OJ got caught again doing another crime.
Right. Yeah. He was busted into.
People were selling his memorabilia in the hotel room in Vegas. Right. Yep. He went back to jail, back to prison. And then he got out, and I'm pretty sure he's in more legal trouble. Oh, well, he might be fine now, actually. I think he finally got out, and he's on Twitter posting videos now.
That's right.
That's right. That's right.
He's posting Twitter videos now.
Yeah.
He's hoping that everyone's cool with him. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here. That was a lot of fun talking about, and I feel like there's a lot more stuff we can get into.
Right.
We'll have to have you on again, Chad. It's been really
That'd be
fun,
cool.
and we can there's a video that I have on here. We're not going to watch it, but we can save it for next time. A guy came up with an algorithm that catches serial killers.
Really?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Too bad he didn't come up with that back in 1970.
Yeah, and they've used it to catch people. It's very interesting, and I feel like if we got into that right now, we just keep talking for a long time.
Is it called Google search?
Like, no.
People are searching.
Yeah. It's not.
See
no,
what you're
yeah.
searching.
One more thing I want to add. While we've been talking about this whole thing, one of the things I want to talk about before was how hard it would be to be a serial killer nowadays compared to back then, with all the cameras, the advances in criminal, and like, I gotta believe there's changes in how easy it'd be to catch somebody nowadays than it would be back in like the 70s and 80s.
You know, I read just a little bit about that, and they say it's harder to catch people now because they're smarter criminals. Because they can watch all the crime shows.
True.
And see the documentaries.
And look up all
how
this
the serial
information
killers got caught.
on Google and figure stuff
exactly.
out. I just figured
And if
That's
you're
an interesting discussion there, Ethan, yeah.
If you're the type of
I
person.
think it goes both ways. It helps, like, advancement with, like, the cops, the FBI, and all that, but also serial killers have more stuff to look into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That could open up another whole thing. But we are going to wrap it up here tonight. It has been awesome talking to you, Chad. Really appreciate you coming, and definitely going to have you back on and dive deeper into this kind of stuff.
Colin, we're going to have to go watch some cartoons or something. Like something.
Yeah, I know.
Before I go to bed tonight.
Yeah.
Light and fluffy here.
Well, all I'm going to tell you
Ethan
is...
and I are going to listen to High School Musical and like back up to the kid.
Cue me in.
All I'm going to tell you is I found pictures of some of the stuff that I could not include.
No, I would look this way if you were going to show.
Just because of how gruesome they are. Like, I'm just going to say that. I did not want to pull up some of the stuff because it is, and if people want to go look. But I did not want to make everyone have to look, because we looked at some bad stuff.
We want some viewers next week.
All I'm saying is there's worse stuff that you can find out there that'll really hit home if you're trying to...
It's crazy how much stuff they release from all the stuff. Like,
well, you got to think how long ago this was.
Yeah, true, but it's just crazy.
When you should be aware of all that. I mean, you should be aware of this stuff.
True.
Like,
Like
the psychology of people and like how you should keep your guard up. I mean, you shouldn't be gullible and you know, it's out there. Like we said, the smells, and don't think every smell is going to be a serial killer out of your apartment. It's very small percentage, but I mean,
you don't want to be cynical about it.
You don't want to be cynical about it, but you have to know what's out. These people are out there.
It's good to be aware of things that have happened in history, and these events are kind of like ingrained in Americana. Like it seems like people talk about it.
Harsher hitchhiking rules nowadays.
There are.
That's why.
Harsher hitchhiking.
That's
you don't see as many people hitchhiking. As probably in the 70s.
Kind of a common thread too with seeing these threads.
And penalties.
Yeah.
So like Dahmer exposed himself to like 25 people, got a $50 fine. Ed Kemper killed 10 people, and his conviction is 7 years to life.
Really?
Served concurrently.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So the penalties, have gotten a lot worse. So people don't want to commit crimes.
Well, I don't know that it's really a deterrent. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a question that's really on fire for debate right now.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that could be another thing we'll add to the list when Chad comes back on the next time of the podcast. So we'll be back next week. I'm pretty sure we're going to continue. We're going to get kind of into the Halloween stuff. So we're going to be talking about paranormal, demonic things like that. So it's going to be the Halloween month, the scary month. We're going to be doing all kinds of paranormal and demon related.
And on Halloween the 31st, we're just going to eat candy, right?
Just going to eat candy, yeah. We're going to end the month after talking about all this creepy stuff.
We're going to go find the wilder demon.
Find the wilder demon, yeah. So thanks again, Chad, for coming. It's been awesome. It's been a really good time, and that flew by. That went super quick. Colin and Damon, thank you guys again for coming on.
Ethan.
It's always a good time having you guys. Make sure you are on Facebook sharing the podcast, getting that out there, and we are going to be giving out more shirts and stuff. Also, next week we will announce the winner of the 3 shirts that we talked about on the 50th episode. We have those winners, so next week we will be announcing them, and we will be giving out more shirts and gear. So make sure if you want to pick up any of that stuff, they are on teewinstore.com, TEEWIN store.com.
And make sure you stop down at the Bark and pick up your haunted schoolhouse.
Yeah, make sure you come down here and pick up the haunted schoolhouse tickets. That'll be the 11th, 12th, 15th, 16th, and wasn't it 15th?
On the weekends.
Yeah,
it's on the weekends.
But your ticket gets you discounts all around town this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like worth it, even if you don't go to the show or go get a ticket and use it around town.
11th, 12th, 18th, 19th.
Yeah, not 15th.
But you'll want to go to the show.
Yeah, definitely. So make sure you come out to the Haunted Schoolhouse. We got to promote the Bark because they've helped us out big time here. So we'll be back next week. This is the Ethan Clerc Podcast Show.